I'm John Generone, Editor-Chief of Exec Edge. Delighted to be here with Andy Wiederhorn, who is the chairman and founder of FAT Brands, trades on NASDAQ under the ticker FAT. Now, this company has a special place in my heart because I followed it closely back when it went public. Andy might remember that, 7 years ago, one of the few Reg A deals that seemed to work out. So Andy, a real treat to have you here in our program.
Thanks for having me.
So can you give us a brief history of FAT Brands? What spurred you to continue to grow the company, which now has 18 different brands in it?
Yeah, really the vision, we own the Fat Burger brand since 2003, so we acquired it 20 years ago and bought another brand, Buffalo's Cafe, and then took the company public and we acquired Ponderosa and Bonanza. And really the vision was, how could we create one platform and have the synergies of one back office, one legal, one purchasing, all those kinds of things, and really take each of these brands that are expensive to operate on their own and put them into one vehicle and leverage that, and that was the public company thesis.
Now tell us about the different brands. Which are the biggest? Which are the most significant in terms of revenue?
We're organized into 5 categories. So we have a QSR division, we have a fast casual division, a casual dining division, full service, then a polished casual, the sports bars like Twin Peaks and Smokey Bones, and then finally we have a manufacturing business where we make cookie dough and pretzel mix for our ice cream and cookies business and so on.
Gotcha.
Not all of the 18 brands are high growth. It's probably 7 or 8. It's like Fazoli's, our Italian QSR brand. It'll be the cookies and ice cream. We've sold a lot of additional stores, franchises. Then Fat Burger, Johnny Rockets, lots of demand for those. Round Table Pizza. And then Smokey Bones. It's basically everything but casual dining. You just don't see heavy demand for people to build new casual dining units. Yeah. They'd rather either spend more money and buy a polished casual dining store that's going to do 2 or 3 times the AUV. Or they'd rather go in the QSR or fast casual space.
It makes sense. Now, do you think a lot about synergies when you're adding a new brand to the portfolio? How some of they might work together and cooperate, share data, knowledge?
Everything at FAT operates on one platform, except for Twin Peaks and Smokey Bones. We kept those businesses separate because they're such a high alcohol business. At sports bars, and they're doing 48% alcohol or whatever. So our decision to spin that off and take that company public right now as a spinoff sort of fits that model. We kept it separate the whole time, but we're always looking at can we combine the purchasing department, the accounting department, the legal department, different operations by geography to inspect the restaurants and coach franchisees, but it's all about synergies.
Gotcha. Now, the restaurant space, let's talk some macro stuff, has had to deal with some inflation. And of course, there have been a lot of stories about, of course, these aren't in your portfolio, but, the likes of McDonald's and Burger King, it costs you $12, $15 to eat there, whereas in the 90s, I remember when I was a teenager, you could get a value meal for like $3. So prices have gone up, and it's had to be passed on to some degree. How is Fat Burger and how and the rest of your concepts dealing with this?
Well, I think the consumer has had it with price. They're done. They're just not going to go up and tolerate it. They can't. And we've seen people trade down in categories, and so they go from casual to fast casual to QSR, and the QSR guy hits a wall, he has nowhere to go. So he reduces his frequency, it comes less often, right? And so definitely seen price. And what we see now is really the value proposition. You've got to justify the price, and that's through the guest experience. So the guest has to have great food, he has to have great service, cleanliness, all the digital engagement that you would expect, and that's the only way to create that value proposition. And so, in a very simple example that's not my example, like Starbucks, how do they justify a $6 cup of coffee? It's got to be a great experience. If it's not a great experience, people are not going to spend $6 for a cup of coffee.
Right. Now, so there are price wars, but what's going on more now is a value wars, right? Can you tell us what that's all about?
Well, it's similar to what we were just talking about, that you're going to, another way to deal with price is you can change up your product mix to make that work. So maybe that's more chicken, less beef, or the other way around, depending on commodity prices. Could be smaller portions. It could be menu innovation to reduce the cost and try to give value. Like at Fazoli's, which is our lowest priced brand and most price sensitive in terms of QSR, you can feed a family of 4 for $30, $32, and that's a pizza, pasta, breadsticks, meatballs. And that's value oriented, right? And you can feed the whole family for $30. That's great. But when we see gas prices spike, there's less customers going through the drive-thru. And it's just a very, very, you can put your finger on the pulse of the economy at Fazoli's for sure.
That's really interesting. So as far as growth, can you tell us about your development pipeline? When you look at new units and where they're going to be?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have 2,300 restaurants open.
Wow.
We're the 25th largest restaurant company by unit count in the country for those 18 brands. We also have an 1,100 store pipeline of incremental stores we've sold to franchisees to build more restaurants.
Gotcha.
We'll build, knock on wood, 125 new stores this year.
Gotcha.
And that I always think of the health of a franchise system is when its franchisees are buying or signing up to build new stores. So they're coming back for more. They want more units. If it's not healthy, they're leaving.
Yeah.
Right? And so we sold 250 new stores in 2024, 225 in 2023, and we'll sell some similar number this year. So we've got constant backlog of stores to build. And to be fair, they never build everything they sign up for. But even if they build half of them, we'll sell another 500, and that'll backfill it. So it's very healthy pipeline of new stores to build, and that just represents a lot of incremental growth for us as a business in terms of EBITDA or cash flow.
Yeah.
And it's organic, so you're not paying for it. If we build out those 1,000 stores and make $50 million more in incremental royalties and EBITDA, if we wanted to make an acquisition and make $50 million of EBITDA, we'd have to spend $500 million. So we have to go borrow $500 million to buy that. But if you have that organically, then there's no cost.
Right.
It's all, so you pick, right? I mean, so our focus right now is not buying 7 more brands. It's let's get the stores open we've sold, because that's free organic growth instead of very expensive levered growth.
Great. We're going to get to the Twin Peaks spin-off in a second, but let's talk about activity in the other direction. Is it possible that you're going to do more acquisitions this year?
Yeah, so I think we'll be as strategic as we can. We don't own a coffee brand, a salad brand, a sandwich brand, stuff like that. We're not really interested in fine dining or super ethnic brands that I think are hard to franchise with quality.
Yeah.
And fine dining, the same thing, hard to franchise with quality. But I'm more interested in things that are strategic bolt-ons, like for Twin Peaks. Maybe there's another sports bar brand like Smokey Bones that makes sense to convert locations, or that has a different demographic that would complement the Twin Peaks business. We have this manufacturing business that makes the cookie dough and pretzel mix for our brands. Maybe we buy another cookie brand, and then we can make the dough also, and sort of get 2 bites at the apple. I think that our focus really right now for 2025 is get the Twin Peaks business, really up in the air as a public company, and de-lever our balance sheet a little bit, and then decide if there's the right opportunity. We really don't want to buy turnarounds. I only want to buy brands that have the wind at their back. So I feel like a turnaround is just a lot of shoveling, and it takes a long time. It's very even if it's cheap, it's very difficult to really move it and grow it and scale it. And so I'd much rather pay full price, 10x for a brand with pipeline and wind at its back than 2x for a brand that's just a turnaround.
It's interesting, like a value trap or something. So let's talk about Twin Peaks. And by the way, I want to tell our viewers, if you want to learn more about Twin Peaks, you should watch my interview with Joe we did yesterday, the CEO of Twin Peaks. But so actually, how about this? Let's talk about how this spin is good for fat shareholders. Let's, setting aside the benefits or the potential opportunity for investors in Twin Peaks as a standalone. Right.
So we looked at all of our brands, all 18 brands, and had a third-party valuation come in and put a number on it, somewhere around $3.5 billion. We have $1.25 billion of debt.
Yeah.
So that makes the equity value, the enterprise value, 3.5, the debt, the equity value like $2.25 billion. Okay, and that with 20 million shares outstanding, that's like $100 a share. We're trading at $5 a share. There's a huge disconnect in terms of the value here. And so what we wanted to do with the Twin Peaks asset was it's getting valued around $1.4 billion enterprise value. It has $400 million of debt, so that means FAT would shed $400 million of debt, and it would go with Twin Peaks, and that brings FAT's debt down. And then as it spins off as a public company, we'll own so much of the stock, and over time we'll sell some of that stock, pay down other debt. But you can see on our balance sheet, hey, they own $800 or $900 million of Twin Peaks stock, and they have debt, and they have these other brands, and it starts to be a roadmap for value, and you can see that the sum of the parts is clearly worth more than it's trading at, and that's hopefully that this spin-off and this roadmap will let investors see that and say, okay, I want to participate here. I can either buy the Twin Peaks growth story, and that thing is a rocket ship on its way to the moon of new unit growth and continued best in class service of the sports bars, or I want to do the value play and buy the fat stock, or buy both. But you can decide if you're buying at a discount the value of fat, or you want to play the growth story of Twin Peaks.
That makes a lot of sense. All right, to wrap things up, in order to become one of the biggest, you're already number 25, US-based restaurant companies, what is the most critical lever that FAT Brands needs to pull?
Well, I think for now, delevering is important this year and unlocking value, monetizing some of these brands, because I think that gives investors the confidence to come back and do it again. We spent $1 billion during COVID buying brands when everybody else was hiding under the table, and we really made some great acquisitions. But today things are calmer, rates are higher, and if we're going to do that again, I think we want to make sure that the economic environment is right, we can get the right deals, and we just don't have that pressure to grow right now. It's really organically, let's make sure that's working because that's free. And so I think that's our short-term decision, and then long-term we'll add on some strategic larger acquisitions. So we won't buy 9 more brands. We buy 2 or 3, but they'll be much bigger.
Great. Well, Andy, this has been a real treat, and I hope to get you back on the air around the time of the spin, which is coming up pretty soon.
Absolutely.
Everyone, this has been Andy Wiederhorn, who is the chairman of FAT Brands. I'm John Generon of Exec Edge, signing off from Orlando.